of the top 50 top-rated vacation destinations in North America. And not only that, 3 locations on the Central Coast made that top 50 list, but that is up from number 30 in the previous year. So we've already gone up 12 spots, and number 1 was Hawaii. Can't beat that. So that's all the news for tonight.
That's good news. Thank you, Tracy. Susan Bott, followed by Frank Peters.
Good evening. I'm Susan Bott, representing Save Our Solvang. And I just wanted to follow up on the goals workshop, because we were pleased to see that number A1, address future growth issues, was off the list of the top goals. We're pleased to see the results of the goals workshop. They've found the issue of growth and future annexations to not warrant major city goal status. We also appreciate that the sphere of influence to be examined is only that area already within Solvang's current SOI. Likewise, the possible annexation issue is to consider only the current SOI. And of course, we still favor the public being consulted in any future visioning process. Thanks for your consideration on these.
Thank you, Susan. Frank Peters.
Mayor Richardson, members of the City Council, my name's Frank Peters. I'm a member of the board of Santa Barbara Bicycle Coalition. We're a countywide organization trying to promote more bicycling. And of course, May is National Bike Month, as many of you know. SBCAG celebrates it as Cyclemania, kind of May crazy play on words there. And I wanted to come out tonight to thank Mayor Richardson. He's going to play along. We're doing a ride Thursday, May 24th at noontime, right in front, right outside here. We're going to ride around the center of Solvang on a ride suitable for, we say, all ages and abilities, and I invite you all to come along. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Might want to comment that there's also a mayor's first annual in Carpinteria bike ride and in Santa Barbara on the 16th and 17th, I believe. Thank you. I have no other speaker slips. Does anyone wish to speak that didn't give us a speaker slip? Seeing none, we'll go forward. Council comments and requests. Would you like to start, Karen?
Yes, thank you. At our last council meeting, we had Karen Palmer come and speak in the public comments regarding global kindness, and I would like to get a board consensus to have her on our agenda, or one of our agendas next month, to present the program that she's involved in, so that we can learn about that. She's also a big advocate for having the city of Solvang become, a representative for global kindness. So I would like to get more information from her for everyone here and the general public, and I'd like that on our next agenda.
She can make a presentation, but at the start of the meeting, about 10 or 15 minutes, without having an agenda item, unless we're going to discuss something.
If there's a consensus to bring it back to consider being a kindness city, there's an option you can pass a resolution. So I think that's what we're looking for. So
yes, I'd like to pass a resolution on that. So she would like to give a full presentation with the slideshow and possibly speakers from the global organization.
So yeah, we can do it as a presentation or as an action item. It'd be up to the council to.
What's your favor?
I say just bring it up as an action item and give her, I don't know, 15 minutes or something. Is that 15 minutes appropriate?
Right. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, we'll get that scheduled.
I think that's great.
Anything else?
Yes. So I've been giving some thought, and this is not on the agenda. And we've also gotten communication regarding the removal of parallel parking on 246. So I would like to bring that back for discussion amongst the city council for a number of reasons, and they have to do with safety reasons, storefront visibility, pedestrian, and bike lanes. So it kind of all ties together with a lot of the biking projects that we're working on now in transportation.
So I'd be more than happy to bring that up. Okay.
I've been trying for years.
Okay, we'll
Great.
schedule that at a future
I
agenda.
miss old Hans Deuce. Okay, anything else?
No, that's it for me right now.
Ryan?
My only thing was I was expecting at some point we were going to have 1 or 2 goals discussed per council meeting, but it wasn't on this one, so I just wondered what the plan was for that.
Yeah, I think we're going to bring back the goals in total next meeting, and if you'd like, we could pick 2 of those off at that point. We thought we would summarize what Rick did into a staff report at the next city council meeting.
Okay. And then we would start doing 1 or 2?
Yeah, I
or-
think we will.
I believe we got the consensus for that last.
right
okay.
to bring those back 2 at a time. Are we doing? Yeah, maybe we can do 2 of them at the next council meeting. Yeah, because Lisa's going to be doing that staff report. So
Okay.
okay.
Okay. Joni?
Well, today I spent from 8 o'clock until about, an hour and a half ago with some visitors from the Ukraine. This is the 5th year they've come. They're always very young, engaging, educated people. And the group at this visitation was interested in our foster care and adoption processes. They have both foster care and adoption, but they also have what they call boarding homes, which is in reality is an orphanage. And they're trying their best to get rid of their orphanages because they don't work. And the United States found that out also many years ago, that orphanages are not good for the spirit and the growth of a child. Every year they come, I just get more enthusiastic about them and their country. Unfortunately, they're in a time of war right now, and you can just tell the burden that these young people carry with them. Even though they may not be in the war zone, they have family members that are there. And from the first 2 times that they come, everything was light and great, and Crimea was their Riviera, and they were making money there and putting it back into their government, and now it's just kind of imploded on them. And there's an interesting theory about the whole process, that the older generation, who always looked to Mother Russia for everything, didn't have to think, they were taken care of, they are delighted now. And the young people are just devastated that they're now back in what they call the old times of living under the heavy hand of Russia. They love Solvang. They love the Elverhoy. They love the Wildling. They love the Mission. They loved driving through Santa Ynez. They thought it was a real cowboy town. I just found it very rewarding. I look forward to them coming again.
Neil?
Yeah, I've been meaning to talk to Matt about this, but to bring it to staff's attention as well. On 3rd Street, where Elroy basically meets 3rd, there's that sewer drain, or just street drain, I guess it is. On the last rain or whatever, it was pretty bad as far as like being able to handle the amount of runoff in that particular drain. And I don't think I've seen anything on any of the improvements for drainage or anything for that particular location. I just wanted to make sure that we are aware of it, and it may just need to be widened or something to better that flow.
Good evening, Mayor Richardson, council members, Matt Vanderlyn, Public Works Director, City Engineer. Councilman Zimmerman, thank you very much for mentioning that. We actually are aware of that. We almost we're going to be able to address it this fiscal year. We anticipate it just needs to be enlarged, that drainage inlet, like you said, exactly. One of the things we had decided, though, was to hold off just a little bit because we've already started our storm drain master plan. And so that storm drain master plan will identify all storm drain and drainage deficiencies within the city, and then we'll also prioritize those. And so we do anticipate that will be one of the higher priority ones, but before we spend any money on that, we wanted to make sure we have everything prioritized and addressing the worst locations first. So that study has started. The City Council awarded the contract about 2 months ago. But it won't be finished till the fall. But at that time, we'll incorporate whatever improvements into our 10-year capital plan. And you'll be able to see that master plan, of course, and approve it, and I see the projects and the priorities, and be able to direct staff, if you want us to change any of those priorities. So.
Cool. Thanks. That's all.
As for my comments, we mayors in the county had our quarterly meeting with mayors and city managers, and during those meetings we have a presentation by a representative from the League of California Cities, and his presentation talked about various bills that are in the legislature and that are on the ballot that we should consider. And there was quite a list, and I don't have the list, but if anybody's interested, we can get copies of that so that you'll be able to understand the League of California Cities' positions on those various bills. And also, we learned at that time that there's some activity going on over at the Mercantile. Is that the Forest Service has signed a lease with the Mercantile in the old People Helping People building to be for their regional office, a Forest Service regional office, which will employ about 50 people in that office. And they'll have parking for some of those light green trucks that you see drive around, which is really something that's fantastic, is that we pull in 50 more employees in the city. And also, oh man, it slipped my mind. For those of you that live on Skit Mesa, you'll be happy to know that Solvang has forwarded a request to install traffic signals at the foot of Skit Mesa on Highway 246. The request has gone into Caltrans, and we're waiting an answer whether or not they will.
It will be going in. Yeah, we're preparing the letter. We've not quite sent it.
Okay. It's on its way. With that, that's all my comments. Correspondence received by City Council. We have none in the folder. On the consent agenda.
Actually, we did.
Yeah, we do have some things.
This one.
Yeah, we have one letter from Laura Buff regarding improvements to the city. That she's made some suggestions regarding eliminate or limit parking on 246, limit parking spots by the park and the sides of the road in the heart of Solvang, encourage our bakeries and restaurants to provide outdoor seating. It would be nice if the tasting rooms had an outdoor option. On weekends, close a 2-block stretch of Copenhagen and make it a pedestrian mall, which we have discussed that in the past of permanently doing that. That might not be a bad idea. It would make more for a festive atmosphere and a nicer look than parked cars. And diagonal parking places in front of businesses and other spots would be more inviting if there are outdoor garden spots or eating areas. And then I think we need another park downtown Solvang where playground equipment and perhaps a water feature for young children play in when it's hot and shade and attract families. I've often suggested that the corner of Alisal and Mission, where next to the bank that's been closed, that lot could be used for something along those lines. And also, she sent a plea to add a cannabis dispensary in the city. Any comments on those? All right, we'll go to the consent agenda. Does anybody wish to pull any items on the consent calendar? If not, then can I have a motion accepting the consent calendar?
I'll move that we accept A through I.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Toussaint?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Wade?
Yes.
Zimmerman?
Yes.
Mayor Richardson?
Yes. That passed with a 5-0. On to the regular agenda. Item number 5.
Item 5, joint use agreement between the Solvang School District and the City of Solvang for use of parking lot.
Staff report.
Very short staff report here. The City Council asked staff to pursue additional public parking in an agreement with the Solvang School. We've been working on that for quite some time, and we finally have that has come to fruition, and the school board has approved it. Just as background, there are no public parking lots north of Mission other than the Vets Hall parking lot, which is obviously serves as the parking lot for that facility and the library. So staff is recommending that council approve entering into this agreement. It would be for non-school hours use of that parking lot. We will sign outside and then some directional parking signs to that location.
Any questions of the staff report?
When you talk about signs for that lot, so will be a sign on 246 directing people towards that lot?
Yeah, we have a standard green parking sign with an arrow, so we were anticipating putting those on Mission to direct them there, and then at the entrance to tell them it's a limitation of during non-school use.
Got it.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions?
I move the acceptance.
I'm sorry?
I move the acceptance.
I'll second.
Just a moment. Let me go to the public for comment.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. We gotta do that. Yeah.
I have no speaker slips. Does anyone in the public wish to comment on this arrangements we have with the Solvang School? Seeing none, now we'll come back for.
Okay. I move the acceptance of the staff report.
And I'll second that.
That's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? That passed with a 5-0. On to item 6.
Item 6, first reading of ordinance regulating adult use and medical marijuana cultivation, processing, and transport within the City of Solvang.
Staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Before you this evening is an introduction for first reading by title only, an ordinance of the City Council regulating the cultivation, processing, and transport of adult use and medical marijuana. I'm not going to go through the staff report in great detail, but suffice it to say that Prop 64, the Adult Use of Marijuana Act, changed the legal landscape for the use of recreational cannabis in the state of California. It did leave some areas of local regulation to the cities, but a significant amount has been preempted by state law. So what's before you tonight is a proposed ordinance that would maximize the city's power to regulate the commercial uses and medical uses within the city by prohibiting those types of uses in those areas where the city can prohibit, namely the manufacture, processing, and so on. The state law, the AUMA, does allow the indoor cultivation of up to 6 mature plants per residence. It's not per person, so we are not able to regulate on that, but we do have the ability to regulate in the other areas. So the policy decision for you is whether or not to be less restrictive than what is presented before you. The Planning Commission forwarded this draft of the ordinance to you based on some of the other cities in the area regarding their usage, but you do have significant policy discretion as to how you would like to address this issue. And the first reading is just that. You have the opportunity at this point to make such changes as you believe are necessary. And then we would go ahead and make those changes and bring it back either as a renewed first reading, or you could refer it back to the Planning Commission. That's another option that you would have. Or you can go ahead and introduce the first reading of the ordinance as presented. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about the substance of the ordinance.
Are there any questions of the staff report?
No, other than we wanted to verify that the emergency ordinance expires 9/26/18.
That is what it appears to me from looking through the documentation, yes.
So since there are no other questions of staff, can I go to the public for public comment. Tracy Beard, followed by Mary Conway.
We feel this is a very hard decision for our community to make in our city council, but at this time right now, the Chamber of Commerce has taken a position of no cannabis in Solvang, and whatever the city chooses to vote, we will go and enact that way, and we choose right now not to take any chamber members that use cannabis or do cannabis at this time.
Thank you. Mary Conway. followed by Dawn Dunn.
Good evening, Mayor Richardson and council members. You know, when we talk to our kids about the drug culture and what's going on, they continue to tell us that alcohol is the #1 drug of choice, and marijuana is right there behind it. So being that I work with the San Ynez Valley Youth Coalition, we're always advocating for the health and safety of our young people. When they say marijuana is right behind us, right behind the alcohol, it's so close. And when you ask, well, what's up? You know, why are these two drugs they continue to stay in the top 2? And what they tell us is it's just easy access, and it truly is. I mean, when you have alcohol in our homes and in the business of our community, it's very accessible. And now with marijuana being considered a legal drug here in the state of California, the accessibility, the idea that it's normal, just like alcohol and perhaps tobacco, is really putting our students at risk, our young people. So I'm really grateful that you have this ordinance before you, and that, you know, written as it is, that you're taking a strong stance in helping to protect our kids from the access and the influence. I do want to just mention, in regards to the language in the California State Cannabis Law, Proposition 64, it's a little bit vague on when they say you, in regards to smoking in public. So currently it says that you, under state law, cannot smoke cannabis in any form or edible in public places. And so kind of in researching that, it was kind of unclear as to what they considered public places. So I have the Health and Safety Code in front of me here, and it's Chapter 6 discussing offenses. And what I take note in here is that it says smoking or smoke cannabis or cannabis products in a location where smoking tobacco is prohibited is against the law. And so I'm concerned because we do not have any currently any smoking regulations here in Solvang other than our state law, and so which says that you can't smoke indoors or can't smoke outside of a public building, not a public but a governmental building. So I am concerned that we need to really tighten up our language when it comes to the smoking in public places.
One section here in regard to that is smoking is prohibited, and ingesting marijuana products are subject to regulations contained in the Health and Safety Code. Smoking shall be prohibited in all enclosed public places within the city of Solvang, except hotels and residents. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't talk about outside. You're right.
It doesn't talk about outside. It doesn't talk about our parks, places where our young people are. And with all the products that you'll see with Dawn, it's so, the products that they're using to vaporize are concealable, and you can't tell what they're actually smoking. You can see a vapor, possibly, but you can't really tell what's in that vaping device. And so it's pretty logical that we're going to be having smoking taking place out in the public.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Dawn Dunn, followed by Nancy Emerson.
Hello. Thank you all. My name's Dawn Dunn, and I coordinate the tobacco prevention program at the Santa Barbara County Public Health Department. Thank you for having me, Mayor Richardson and City Council people. I'm here to tell you the tobacco industry is still after our youth and our young people. They haven't stopped, and they're more creative and brilliant than ever. I'm wondering if any of you have heard of Juul. I'll hand it back. It looks like this. Looks a bit like a flash drive. This is the holder. This is the actual vaporizing liquid. comes in 4 flavors. The starter kit, we bought these because we have to understand what the animal is. And this is a $50 investment, 4 different flavors. 1 puff, and they call them hits, literally, like a drug, is the equivalent of 10 hits is 1 cigarette. So one of these cartridges, and this is a closed system, is a pack of cigarettes. And you wouldn't necessarily know, and if this came out of the wash, you wouldn't know. This is how it charges in a computer port, very discreet. This is the one that I think is really ingenious, and one of our school-based projects told us it's called the Soren Air. This is one of the colors, the rose gold variety. And this is not a closed system. You have to add e-liquid to it. That means if it can be liquefied, it can be smoked. So, and this company is a California-based company. Wells Fargo tells me they've captured 56% of the market share in the last 2 years. It's PAX Labs, and they are infiltrating our schools with youth prevention specialists. So the thing about this is there's a small little hole right here, and that's where the smoking is going on. So I'm only here to show you that this is what our youth are using. They're not smoking anymore. They're using electronic smoking devices. This is this iteration. There will be others. And right now, out in front of your bank, on a dining patio, anywhere on your streets and sidewalks, in your parks, you can use these at will and smoke marijuana. So I'm here to encourage you to broaden your definition of smoke drifts, and you don't know what's in these products or any other kind of product that might be coming. So you might want to take a look at your outdoor language. You're the only community in the county outside of Guadalupe that hasn't done some regulation in outdoor areas in our county. Thank you.
Hey, real quick, the one that looks kind of like a
Here, I'll hand them to you.
okay, but
Show and tell. And I can pass them around the audience as long as I get them back.
Can they be infused with cannabis?
So the Jewel, which is the most popular of the two, Soren Air is relatively new. No, that's Soren Air. Jewel is the narrow one. That is what's called a closed system. So that's, you throw it away when you're done. They are making a cannabis, PAX Labs, a San Francisco-based company, is working on a cannabis oil-based product. And my understanding, my history is with chemical dependency treatment long ago. Addicts can figure things out. So I would say that you could probably put just about anything in that closed system, but I'm not an engineer. But the other one requires an e-liquid, and you drip it in. You fill that cartridge with whatever. Does that answer?
Yeah.
You didn't ask the question.
oh no, I was just wondering where the vapor comes out of it. But it looks like it's this little corner here, and then you must have to press a little button or something.
No, it's just when you breathe in, there's a heating coil and element that's in there. It's a battery. Yes. Ingenious.
Is the council, are we okay to sample this?
Well, it's supposed to be charged. It probably is. I will tell you, I haven't ingested a nicotine-based product in 7 years. And when I had that, I was like, and I got a headache and I didn't really breathe in. It was just like I was, so I wouldn't recommend it. And if you're watching, the California State Department of Public Health just launched a huge flavors campaign. There are 15,500 flavors of electronic smoking liquid type products. And one of the television commercials has a young person sampling these and saying, oh, I have a headache. Well, if you've ever smoked, and if you're of a certain era, you smoked, you know what that head rush is. Was there a little charging piece, little square?
I think it's in the white.
Oh, it's in
yeah.
Okay. Would the audience like to see these ingenious devices? I will pass them around. Okay. Oh, they have?
Thank you, Don.
Thank
Thank you.
Nancy Emerson?
It started.
There are some extras there. Tonight, I'm addressing the issue of how best to protect Solvang from intrusive commercial cannabis activities, and I share your concerns about potential problems from these activities. I'm Nancy Emerson. I'm a resident of Solvang. There's been a little discussion about going ahead with the SOI annexation in an effort to control cannabis on the borders. And so I did some research on the county's cannabis ordinance, and I just thought it would be helpful to you perhaps to get a short version of a 48-page document. But I would encourage you to not quickly decide that that's a solution to protecting the borders. When you look at the county zoning map for the valley, you find that along all of the border between Solvang and the county, there's land eligible for indoor cannabis commercial cultivation and nursery. AG 15 through AG 120, plus land eligible for outdoor or indoor cultivation and distribution on Ag 240 and Ag 100 zone land, and there's some of that kind of land on our border. My concern is that if you annex some of the land for that reason, or all of it, you would have new boundaries to then protect, and it just kind of goes on ad infinitum. I think a similar situation exists for all the valley communities, not Solvang alone. It's a problem, and it's difficult to know what to do. The one question I wanted to raise with you about the cannabis ordinance itself, and I'm generally very supportive of what you're doing, is that we are the Valley's medical care center. And looking at the state regulations, evidently there was a point where they were going to separate out medical marijuana from general marijuana retail, and didn't do that. And I think it's unfortunate, because I wonder if we need to consult the medical community about a carefully controlled medical cannabis only retail outlet in the medical area. I don't know what the answer would be, but I just thought out of compassion we should raise the question.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you for that.
Hey, Nancy,
Good
quick
information.
Quick question. I was just wondering if by chance you had any or stumbled across any research yet that would indicate whether or not it would even be economically viable to grow marijuana on the land that you're talking about.
I think that's a good question, because we're reading a lot large cannabis what's the word I want? Sites where they might be doing multiple activities. There some fairly stringent language about actual retail on ag land, but otherwise there could be multi-uses on it. And whether it's viable on Ag 15, I'd question it, but I haven't seen any research yet on that.
Okay, thank you.
Or Ag 10, you know.
Right.
Thank you, Nancy. I have no other speaker slips. Does anyone in the audience wish to speak that hasn't turned into a speaker slip? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council for discussion and action. And who would like to start?
I'll start, and to address everyone in the audience and the public, I really was hoping there would be more people here for such a very important potential decision to be made. And I would like to first let the public know that because this is a very important issue, I have done quite a bit of research on dispensaries, various uses, products, vehicles for the use of marijuana, cannabinoids, CBD, THC, THCA. There are so many derivatives, hemp, where it's legal to sell, different types of licenses that are required for what we are saying here is adult use, but I refer to as recreational use versus medical use. And I would like to make a very important point that Nancy brought up about compassion and individuals that do find relief from this particular product. And at this point, I feel that we need quite a bit of public input. I think it would be very beneficial to speak to people in the medical community regarding a medical clinic, how it operates, and have our entire council educated on this. The clinics that I have seen are extremely regulated, secure, card required, not recreational use. Some of the clinics do not even deliver. Some you have to have separate licenses for delivery, regulated by the state. And so to be very careful about when you are having deliveries and permitting deliveries within the city of Solvang, that you are dealing with an entity that is properly registered to do so. So my stance on this at this point is I don't feel that we are ready to approve a permanent ordinance yet, because I think that it warrants much more discussion, much more public input, particularly in the area of the medical marijuana use, because there are clinics that do just medical marijuana and do not permit the recreational portion of it. And like I said, they're very secure and they're very regulated.
Any other comments?
I'll just say I very much feel that. It's we got many different people out there living with different diseases, pain, arthritis, and I have not gone and seen a dispensary myself yet, so I would like to do a little more homework and research before making a decision on this.
Yoni?
I've known a number of people personally who have suffered severe cancer invasion of their body, and the only relief they could ever get was from cannabis oils. So I would tend to agree that we need to hear more from the medical community as to the benefits of this product and how to go about making it available.
Neil?
Yeah, that all sounds good. I just have a quick little kind of funny story that happened today. It kind of relates to this. So my 3-year-old son, he came up to me and said, "Dad, I want to put smoke in my mouth." And I said, "What are you talking about? You want to put smoke in your mouth?" And he goes, "Yeah, you know, just like smoke in my mouth." And I go, "Where did you see that?" And I'm thinking, where the hell did he see anybody smoke anything, right? And turns out on Mickey Mouse, Pete, the villain antagonist, smokes a cigar. And it's like nothing, though. I mean, for me, it's like nothing, right? But I think as far as children go, it's the parent's responsibility. It's the child's responsibility, whether they're going to choose to do whatever they're going to choose to do. I mean, it's like, so it's right there. It's like it's starting off that young. I was super surprised at like how I just blow that off like it's no big deal, but it's actually highly influential and whatever. So I told him, no, you don't. And he said, yes, I do. And now he's determined. So he'll probably be smoking soon. No. But it brought up a memory of my own. And my experience with tobacco or cigarettes is in 6th grade, my friend had an older brother that had cigarettes, and we smoked like maybe 1 or 2, and I was sick as heck and literally never picked up another cigarette again. So I don't know, there could be this like thing of just natural course of things, where, you know, maybe marijuana isn't as bad as we think it is, or, you know, the stigmas that have been put on it over time, and this and that. You know, I think of the 2 things that are legal here: tobacco, alcohol, and you think of how many lives have been lost, and then you think about marijuana, and you can't really even ask that question. It's more like how many lives have been enhanced. So we're talking about 2 just kind of completely different things here, and then it's the influence of the, you know, culture, environment, family, and that kind of stuff to really, you know, that's where it can get out of control. But just my thoughts.
You know, as far as delaying the process, if we don't enact an ordinance by August, we will not have a marijuana ordinance, period. So by delaying and delaying, we may, time is of the essence, is what I'm trying to say. And there are certain points in this ordinance, and you know, you talk about a crowd here tonight for marijuana. I was at the Planning Commission meeting where this was discussed, and I was the only one in the audience, which I found really disappointing and disheartening. But I heard the Planning Commission discuss the marijuana policies, and I'm going to read to you what they've suggested that we do. The City Council should also consider the following policy issues in making final determinations on the contents of the ordinance. Maximize regulations on growth, including indoor growth, as, for example, what's done in Paso Robles. The Paso Robles ordinance has prohibited any indoor or outdoor growth of even the 6 plants. And they say that's their city ordinance, and if the state forces them to allow it, they will adjust for the state. But their ordinance does state no growing at all. Number 2, make provisions apply for any annexations as well. Consider if we ever annex to the city, we ought to have provision to regulate in those annexed areas. Ban smoking in public. I think that we should adjust the ordinance because of that smoking in public places, not just inside buildings, should be regulated, especially marijuana smoke. You know, we're a tranquil Danish community, and I think that if we bring in marijuana and smoking in the city streets, it's going to disrupt the image that we have built over years. Adult use smoking may be banned by state law, but more regulation may be necessary. Ban growth by renters. Somebody rents a house, they shouldn't grow without permission of the landlord. And consider requiring a permit for even legal outdoor cultivation and private use. So those are some of the things that the Planning Commission has recommended that we do. That's section 545 of the cultivation prohibited. I'd like to adjust that to reflect the Paso Robles ordinance. Suspension and revocation of business licenses. No person shall hold a business license, and owning or operating a business in the city may use that business to operate a marijuana dispensary, conduct commercial marijuana activities, operate a cultivation or nursery, and distribute as accepted in Provision 456. Now, 456 says that delivery is restricted. Delivery of marijuana or marijuana products is limited to delivery for medical purposes to qualified patients by the primary caregiver in pursuit of the health code. It doesn't say anything about dispensaries or deliveries. It says the caregiver delivers. And I'm afraid that if we consider deliveries in the city and license a delivery process, that we're going to be in the wrong area. I believe that we should we should change section 5410 for smoking prohibited so that it says that in public places outdoors, include that. And exclusions concern me. Exclusion says that you can give away marijuana to anybody in certain limited amounts for free. You can't charge for it, but you can give it, and it has to be to an adult. And also smoking apparatus and those sorts of things. I think that's too loose of a description that you can give away marijuana products to an adult, but then if you're giving it away to adult, what happens if there's a teenager or a party or something that they are allowed to get it? So I think that the exclusion paragraph ought to be checked over. The sheriff. Staff has contacted Sheriff's Office for recommendation on the issue of adult use marijuana. The Sheriff's Office does not recommend allowing any activities in regards to adult use marijuana. Their concerns include an increase in public intoxication, driving under the influence, an increase in juvenile use, and associated issues resulting from the ease of getting marijuana from parents, older siblings, and friends. A potential that in a tourist-related economy, a retail establishment might attract people from out of the area and increase undesirable conduct, and a concern that adult use marijuana might have on the effect of Solvang's marketing brand. So based on what I've discussed and based on what I've read, I'm in favor of more restriction than the ordinance, the emergency ordinance we already have. We have to remember the millions of dollars we spent on getting the brand called Solvang recognized around the world. You know that the Netherlands has an image of marijuana usage and prostitution. We don't want anything like that recognized by our town. Our town has become recognized around the world as a place to visit and a place for families. And I think that if we allow any kind of marijuana use within the city, it takes away from that brand and it takes away from our livelihood. You have to remember that people that travel around the world come to Solvang. It aids in our ability to keep a wonderful city that we have. We need those tourists. And so I'd like to see us put additional restrictions on the ordinance, but we're in a time crunch. If we change anything in this first reading, then we will have the first reading in a month, which is in June. If we do the first reading in June, the next reading is going to be in July, and then the following month is August. There's 30 days after the second reading that the ordinance becomes in effect. So it's a possibility where the second reading 30 days expired, the 30 days expires after the August date. So it's a concern that we resolve this issue rapidly. And of course that not all ordinances are complete and stamped and final forever. We can bring it back at some time in the future and modify it. Those are my comments.
Well, I will have to disagree with you in making the ordinance more stringent than it already is. But I also want to let the public know that I'm very sensitive to the availability of any type of illegal substance or damaging substance to minors, such as the smoking and the drinking. And I do quite fully understand how they market to minors. I've seen it. I've gone into smoke shops aside from dispensaries. I've looked at the various ways to vape. I've spoken to people that do that. I've looked at the vaping for marijuana, which is a little different than the cigarette vaping. I still would like to take a look at our ordinance, and I'm almost wanting to put it the other way, because we do already have an ordinance, not an emergency, but we do have a regular ordinance in effect right now that bans the medical marijuana dispensaries, to my understanding. And it's the temporary emergency ordinance that is banning the recreational marijuana. So I'm not suggesting that we have dispensaries in our city per se, but I might suggest that we take a look at something outside of the TRC zone. I don't know. I do know that we do have other zoning outside of the TRC zone. And to go along with your comment regarding our wanting to possibly annex areas of our sphere of influence, or get a sphere of influence or annexation in areas surrounding our city to try to protect, we can't do that anyway, because we would have to show use. So we can't just simply annex property to try to protect, which was, a wonderful idea or wonderful thought, but we can't do that. We'd have to show use for that. Finally, it is legal. I'm not, a proponent. I'm not trying to say that we should have a free-for-all for marijuana in the city of Solvang. However, the citizens of the state of California have voted for some recreational and medicinal uses, and it could, it's coming. Look at the county, look at the cities, look at Santa Barbara, look at Goleta. They all have legal dispensaries where this product is being distributed. So I'm just trying to figure out a way that this can be regulated, which could be very difficult, because we cannot build a wall around Solvang and keep this out, because people will obtain this product legally or illegally. So this just warrants a lot more thought. And I know the urgency, Jim, that you're saying, but I don't think we can make it stricter than it is.
And Dave, even if we did have further deliberations on this ordinance and we went past the August deadline, what does that really mean? I mean,
well, the way the state structure is set up is it's a dual level structure. So you have to have, first of all, your state licensure in place, and then you have to have local licensing. So practically, it would be almost impossible for a commercial commercial recreational business to come and do business in in a locality that didn't have regulations in place, if they didn't have the state licensure. If they have the state licensure in place and there's no local regulations, then they're allowed to do business that way. So, for example, if the city did not have something in effect by August, and we don't have any local level regulation prohibiting someone, if someone has a state level license to transport, state level license to process, they can come in and they say, I have my state license, you have no local regulations, I can do business here. So that is the risk that you have.
So they could have a pop-up until we otherwise do adopt a...
And if they get a toehold in place, it's much more difficult to remove them from that toehold than to prevent it in the first place.
Okay.
Another comment about the legality of marijuana in the state. The state law also states that all cities in the state may regulate the use of marijuana, whether it's legal in the state or not. So we can ban it legally. So it's something that I would recommend, and that some of the folks I've talked to in the city don't want to see marijuana actively sold or used within the city, and that's what I'd like to see happen.
I'd like to get more input from the public and give this some more thought. I think it's too much, too fast, in a sense, because it's so far on one side. It's not. There's no even. It's not written evenly. It's not really fair.
Well, I can agree with you, but we have that August deadline. Now, if you want to have special council meetings that we can discuss marijuana specifically so that we can make those deadlines, we can do that.
I think that this particular issue that we are discussing now should have been more openly publicized. I mean, I know you can go online and see that it's on our agenda, and I know it's posted out front, but there are people that, unless they're online or coming by the city offices here, they don't know that this is going to be on our agenda unless it's word of mouth. So I would be in favor of maybe making this much more public so we could have some more input and having a special meeting.
What if we did a workshop like we did for the goals? Had a workshop before the meeting to get public input?
We could do a workshop. You saw how we had a participation in the goals workshop. It was about a half an audience, and it was actively noticed. You know, so
It was also 3 o'clock on a Monday.
I thought it was good. I thought it was
First week
good.
of June, second week of June. Let's do a workshop.
Sorry,
Let's do a workshop.
I can agree to a workshop. How much notice do we need to do to get a workshop that will be actively discussed before our next council meeting? Next council meeting is 29th.
The next council meeting is May 29th, Tuesday.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, workshops can be difficult just because you get, I don't think you get a broad spectrum of the population if we do it early in the day.
We don't look what
So
we get
public
at
comment,
night.
more public awareness.
Yeah, I think if you gave more public awareness and we had a special meeting, then we could listen to public input. I mean, as far as a workshop, I mean, I don't know how that would work. I mean, I think information is more important, hearing the public's opinion, than doing a workshop.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to sit and educate the public on marijuana uses in dispensaries. I think that's where I'm going with the public workshop. I'd rather hear what the public has to say about it.
Well, you can talk about advertising the council meetings, but marijuana has been a top item in the newspapers and on radio and on television in various cities regarding the marijuana ordinances. And evidently, we don't have people that really are interested in it, even though we noticed it. It's noticed everywhere. The evidence was the Planning Commission meeting, when there was absolutely nobody there for it. So I think that if we delay it, we're going to be kicking the can down the road, and we might lose out come August. And
So
that's what I'm afraid of.
Would there be any consideration in us discussing now kind of the different sections of the current ordinance along with the concerns that the Planning Commission brought up? Because you were kind of going through some of them.
We could do that. We could go through
kind of
section by section to see if we can get an agreement going down the line.
divide it up and kind of see where the council stands on each one of those items, and then just deal with the area that maybe we want to work further on.
That's a good idea. Would you all want to do that? Here goes.
Certainly.
All right.
We'll look at the ordinance. The definitions. Well, the cannabis regulations, the purpose and intent to comprehensively regulate cannabis within the city of Solvang as authorized by state law. In the purposes of this chapter, the following definitions apply: cannabis, commercial marijuana activity, cultivation, that sort of thing. Is there any? Have you read that enough that you're comfortable with the definitions?
What page are you on right now?
I'm on the ordinance. I don't have a page number.
It's 106 in the packet.
Not paginated. Okay. 106?
Yeah.
And you're just asking if anyone understands the definitions.
The definitions are all acceptable to everybody. Okay, marijuana dispensary is prohibited. They're prohibited by the city. Do we want to discuss that? Because they're currently prohibited.
So,
Just for clarifications, the medical ones are currently
Yeah,
prohibited.
medical,
We
yeah,
don't have any
right.
regulations on commercial at this point,
right. So I guess this would go back.
other than the urgency ordinance.
right to the beginning of this meeting, where it seemed to me like we had at least 4 council members at least considering expanding on that, such as maybe allowing a medical dispensary outside of the TRC zone, maybe in our current medical area on Alamotado, or
You know, I think somebody brought up the idea, is cannabis a recognized medical treatment?
Well,
You know,
yeah.
is it a recognized medical treatment?
Yeah,
And
well,
I,
yes,
I
it
think I
is.
feel like we're trying to be sensitive to.
Or is that just rumor, or people talk about how it helps them individually? You know, is it anecdotal?
Right.
Yes, it is.
It's anecdotal.
It is, and that's where I feel that our council should be more educated on that. I mean, there are doctors that prescribe it. I mean, cancer patients have been taking a derivative called Marinol for years before people started smoking marijuana or doing oils or vaping. So yeah, yes, Jim, it is. And I mean, I understand, I understand our tourism and our chamber's stance, where they, at this point, are not ready and don't want to have members who might be in that business part of the chamber. I understand that. So that's,
and I'm not sure.
I'm just trying to draw a fine line on trying to get something that's legitimate and legal, that possibly could be regulated. I mean, we've heard from several senior citizens regarding having to have deliveries and how difficult it is. And quite frankly, I'm not sure where to go, and that's why I want more public opinion. But I don't think we should close it off altogether. I mean, I don't think we should close off the possibility that maybe there could be a clinic. I don't think that's ever really been seriously discussed with any
We have
council.
plenty of senior housing here. I almost want to survey them and find out where they're at. Yeah, I have this letter here saying apparently this is an issue.
The medical dispensary has been prohibited in the city for 8 years, something like that. And I would suggest that if we wanted to go into in-depth discussion with medical dispensaries, that we do that at some future point, so that we can get this thing resolved before August. And I think that by asking for more public opinion, it's just going to delay the thing, and we can do that on a concerted effort to amend the ordinance at some future date.
So just a suggestion, you could take this ordinance and use the term non-medical cannabis. And so that would be your recreational cannabis dispensaries, cultivation, those types of things. You could potentially do that, and then you could deal with the medical dispensary in your regular code. Could you not, Dave?
This ordinance
It's just
doesn't
a thought.
replace our.
Yeah.
So we could replace the emergency ordinance for the recreational or adult use of marijuana, and make an ordinance to ban that, and then take the ordinance that we already have in place for the medical marijuana dispensaries and bring that back at another time for discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, the medical marijuana dispensary provision is just a single ordinance. It was adopted in 2006. I think it's been placed into the zoning code. If you wanted to take a look at it more comprehensively, as far as either allowing, believe me, I'm not directing the discussion at all, but if you wanted to allow dispensaries, the conditions that you wanted to allow them on, if you wanted to allow medical delivery, the conditions that you wanted to allow those under, those are things that you could examine separately from this without having to affect the commercial or adult use of recreational marijuana.
This ordinance will not replace the medical dispensary ordinance.
No, it's going to prohibit some things that are not addressed by that ordinance, but it's by and large written specifically for commercial. There are some references within there to medical. For example, 546 talks about delivery of marijuana or marijuana products is limited to the delivery for medical purposes to a qualified patient. So we do address that to a certain extent. That would be supplementing the existing prohibition on dispensaries for medical marijuana, in that it would allow delivery, or better yet, it would allow delivery of medical marijuana. One of the difficulties that you will find in actual practice is the people delivering marijuana, whether it be recreational or medical, don't have billboards on the side of their vehicles. In fact, they're very difficult to point out from any other car. So you will have an enforcement issue in determining whether or not a particular delivery is for medicinal purposes or for recreational purposes. That's not a reason not to address it. It's just going to be something that if you are going to make a direction to enforce the ordinance, there will be some problems in doing that.
That's the problem that I see too, is that you can't identify. And it would only be in effect on if the subject was apprehended doing something else, and they happen to be there'd be a penalty for that then.
Well, you have to have probable cause to pull over the vehicle. That's regardless of what's in the vehicle. You'll have to have some probable cause, whether whether it's a broken taillight, expired registration. Those are typically valid bases for pulling over a vehicle. What stems from that traffic stop afterwards? There's 1,000 different ways that could go.
So basically, what I'm understanding is that there's almost nothing we can do to stop deliveries coming into Solvang. And
well, there are things that you can do by passing ordinances, but whether or not it will be effective.
But what I'm saying, that's what I'm saying. We can pass an ordinance.
We can't really enforce it either way.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I think this ordinance that we're looking at right now, not amended to add any more restrictions, is at this point is probably the best that we're going to get at this point in time, and have to bring it back for review.
Yeah, I think the intent of it was there was some compassionate medical use, the desire to have that ability to still be there.
Yeah.
So.
And keep in mind, if you pass this ordinance, first reading tonight, second reading at the next council meeting, and it goes into effect, there's nothing to prohibit you from continuing to examine the issue. You will have something in place that you can work with. And if you find that there's significant public input saying, no, we believe that commercial or adult use delivery is adequate, there is not a significant threat to public health in doing that any different than medicinal deliveries, then you could pull back on the existing ordinance and allow that type of thing. But if you, like I said, if you don't have anything in place by the time the urgency ordinance goes out, then it would just be up to whatever the state regulations are.
Right. But we can do what Brad mentioned, which was changing the...
Yeah, just call it non-medical.
Non-medical, and then bringing the other side of it up later for further discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's how this is written right now.
Okay.
So are you suggesting on which paragraphs now? On 546, or we jumped over dispensaries prohibited, marijuana dispensaries, and you want to say recreational?
You could just say non-medical dispensaries.
Medical dispensaries prohibited.
Right, that would be the new ordinance.
Okay.
So and medical would actually already be prohibited in the current zoning ordinance.
So this would be non-medical. That's 543. Just that paragraph. Commercial marijuana activity prohibited. Is there any question? Is there any problem with that?
Were there planning commission comments on that one?
Sorry?
Were there any planning commission comments on that one? We want to read?
The cultivation prohibited paragraph, the next paragraph, state says that they can. Paso Robles wrote an ordinance that says that you cannot cultivate. And if anybody questions that or went to the state, whoever in the state that would be, and the state comes down on the city would adjust their ordinance to allow it. But it would be an initiated somewhere else. But by just prohibiting it, if somebody really insisted on following the state law, they can get the state to come down upon Paso Robles to change their ordinance so that they're allowed. But they're going in with no cultivation allowed.
I think the ordinance that's been prepared for us is done pretty thoroughly, and it does include you know, the deliveries for individuals that are in need and probably have already been receiving deliveries and will regardless of this ordinance. So
The cultivation.
well, the cultivation is, you know, 6 plants. That's what the law says that we can do. I don't see how we are going to enforce the growing. Or I mean, it would be very nice if the sheriff was here and could answer some of these questions.
Well, I can answer it from the legal standpoint. And keep in mind, this is an area where every city attorney in the state is trying to contend with the issues of state law versus federal law. Currently, cannabis is a Schedule I regulated substance. It's prohibited under federal law. That being said, something like 64% of the state of California voted for Prop 64, a significant majority. So we have state regulations in place. Now, to do the next step to prohibit indoor cultivation would be saying that the city of Solvang is implementing an ordinance in violation of state law, and therefore the city would have a difficult time enforcing that. So if you were to find a house with 6 plants growing inside in compliance with state law, and the city, through my office, tried to prosecute that for violation of the city's ordinance, it would be a defense that state law preempts the city law in this particular situation. On top of that, it could be alleged that the city has violated someone's civil rights by enacting that ordinance. So there's all sorts of ways that that could be spun against the city. It's not to say that Paso Robles can't do that. We put into pretty much every ordinance that we draft what we call a severability clause. If any portion of this ordinance is deemed unconstitutional, the rest of it remains in effect. So we put that in because we recognize that courts can come to sometimes differing interpretations of what state law is versus city law. But I'm reluctant to advise you to put in something that on its very face would be something different than what is authorized by state law.
Would that create a liability for the city?
It's a potential liability. You'll never hear me say it is a liability in open session. I may tell you that in closed session, but it's always a potential liability if someone were to bring a cause of action against the council or against the city for that type of thing.
Okay.
Comments?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a good starting point with the way the resolution is drafted right now.
Well, there's some changes I'd still like to see later on. You know, I'll accept his words of caution, words of wisdom.
What about the commercial cultivation? What are we doing about that?
This section would ban commercial cultivation in Solvang.
It bans.
The way written.
It would also ban outdoor cultivation, which is something that cities are permitted to do. Now, I'll point out there is one minor ding against cities that do prohibit outdoor cultivation. There's a fund that's been set up from the sales of commercial marijuana. There are grant funds that are available from the state under that program. For cities that ban outdoor cultivation, they're not eligible for those grant funds. It's not a lot of money, and the chances of the city probably competing well, I think it's need-based. The city might have a difficult time. So I do want to just let you know that that is one of the downsides of adopting a ban on outdoor recreational cultivation.
Beer wanted out.
I'm fine with that one the way it is.
Okay. Delivery restrictions. So we'll leave 545 as is. On delivery restrictions, I think that if we limit it to just that paragraph, that would be as good as we can for medical purposes only. No comments?
Yeah, I think that one's consistent unless we
Yeah,
were to change
we're
the medical. Obviously, if if something came down later on, you were to allow a medical dispensary here, then you would need to change the last wording on that, but that would just be done at that time.
Distribution, next paragraph, the distribution of marijuana products is prohibited by the city except for the deliveries in 546. No person shall conduct or allow to be conducted an operation in or upon any premises in the city. Any problem with that one? On to manufacturing. Manufacture of marijuana products is prohibited in the city. No person allow the manufacturing, blah, blah. Is any problem with that one? Testing services prohibited. Is there any problem with that one? And then we come to smoking. I take the advice of the folks out there that smoking in public places, outdoors, we should restrict marijuana smoking in the parks, on the streets, park benches, up and down the sidewalks of the city, anywhere.
I think our whole smoking ordinance has to be revamped, and then that could be wrapped into it.
Yeah, I think we should make it consistent, you know, smoking or whatever.
We should, but in the meantime, we ought to take advantage of the chance that we have right now.
If I can chime in on that, the language that you have before you says that smoking and ingesting marijuana products are subject to the regulations contained in that specific health and safety code. If you take a look at that, it says it does not permit any person to smoke or ingest cannabis in a public place, except in accordance with very specific requirements. It also doesn't allow smoking cannabis in locations where tobacco is prohibited. It doesn't allow smoking of cannabis within 1,000 feet of a school, daycare center, youth center, possessing it in while driving or operating a vehicle. There's a whole list of things under the state law as to how it's prohibited. We can take that and it's incorporated into our ordinance. If you want to start a more comprehensive smoking in public places with respect to tobacco, then, for example, if you adopted an ordinance that says we will not allow it within 500 feet of a park in the city, then you would roll in the prohibition of tobacco under that as well. So there are ways that you can do that, but there are fairly comprehensive regulations already in effect under state law, even though they're not put forth in our ordinance.
I think we're covered on this.
Yeah, if you read the health and safety code section, you know, we are covered. But it should be, I think, noted in our ordinance that is prohibited in public places.
Is there also consensus to bring up our smoking policy for discussion to potentially make more stringent?
I think the smoking policy should be looked at also. We don't have one.
Your smoking ordinance, yeah.
Well, we do.
You default to the state.
Yeah.
You default to the state, yeah. And I think we've heard that at several.
But I think we all kind of want to bring that one up.
We just don't. We're not adequately enforcing our smoking policy.
So, what is your desire on smoking prohibited? That the state safety code will handle the job for us?
What I think I'm hearing is you're going to request that we bring back your smoking ordinance to beef that up, and that can be taken care of as part of that.
Right.
Because when you list what can't be smoked, you can say tobacco, you can say cannabis, you can say vaping, all of those products.
So it sounds like as written here, this is okay then. Okay.
Okay. Section 5411, public nuisance. This brings to mind the odor from growing and the wafting of growing plants. It's not noted that that is a public nuisance, but it might be.
It is noted that the cultivation of marijuana is considered a nuisance. So any smells associated with the cultivation would be wrapped
That could
within
be
that.
worked into the.
Well, it is wrapped
into
within that.
enforcement?
Well, it's just the cultivation at all, whether it smells or not,
Well,
would be prohibited under
But
this.
the cultivation's outside the city. We can't do anything about that with
Correct.
the odor coming in, huh?
Not from a land use standpoint, no. I mean, that would be if it's set up in the county and if the smell is wafting into the city, that's going to be a county enforcement issue. Now, there may be some, if it's from a public area, there's a nuisance smell, such as in parks. If something was established in the county next to a park, there may be a cause of action for the city to pursue a nuisance action in that situation. There may also be private nuisance actions for private property owners who are affected by that, but that would be a little bit more complicated analysis. Under our ordinance, just the mere cultivation, whether it has a smell or not, would be considered a nuisance subject to regulation.
All right, everybody satisfied with that? On to 514.12, confiscation. If there's any question with that the police can confiscate? Okay. Suspension of business license. Any problems with that?
No problems with that at this point.
Yeah. All right, penalties. That's at their what do you call it? Misdemeanors. Violation of the ordinance is a misdemeanor. 6 months or $1,000.
No, no way. That's absurd.
Yeah. That's established by state law. That's the penalty for a misdemeanor under state law.
This is a misdemeanor.
Yeah. The reality is you're not going to see either imprisonment or a fine of $1,000. That's the type of situation where if I were to go in and ask for $1,000 on a first violation, the court would probably laugh me out of court. It's a kind of a sliding scale, and there's no specific amounts, but typically you're not going to get, you're almost never going to get that kind of fine on a first offense. You're going to get that on a repeat offender, perhaps. I have not, in my nearly 30 years of being city attorney or deputy city attorney, ever sought jail time for any misdemeanor. And I can't think of a situation, although there have been some times where perhaps it might have helped. I haven't seen any situations where city attorneys have really been effective in seeking imprisonment. One of the threats, slumlords, that's one where the threat of imprisonment can get some action going. But on something like this, I can't imagine. That's just the standard type of punishment that the court can impose for a misdemeanor, regardless of what it's for.
Okay. Satisfied with that one? Mm-hmm. On to exclusions. Are there any questions or comments on exclusions? Do you think that it would cover not allowing children to get a hold of marijuana when it can be gifted?
It's like alcohol.
Yeah.
How do you control that?
I think I think you're allowed to produce a certain amount of alcohol for your own personal use. It's not sellable, but you can gift it.
You can gift it.
You can gift it.
Then we have
Well, I do know that. I think this does say it and it tries to cover it, but I do know that if you have a marijuana card and you do give any product to an individual, you can get your card pulled. So, the intent is that if it's yours for personal consumption, you aren't going to be distributing it and giving it to other people.
And I do also want to point out that the Adult Use of Marijuana Act, or Prop 64, says it shall be lawful under state and local law and shall not be a violation of state and local law to possess, process, transport, purchase, obtain, or give away to persons 21 years of age or older without any compensation not more than 28.5 grams of cannabis. That's state law. State law allows that. So that's why we have the language in our ordinance that says nothing in this chapter is intended to prohibit what is permitted by state law.
that's in effect the end of it. The severability and exemption from CEQA, effective date, and publication are all boilerplate.
But just to clarify, the only change that I've heard in terms of the text, it would be a change to section 543, which would say non-medical marijuana dispensaries are prohibited in the city. No person shall operate or allowed to be operated a marijuana dispensary. Is that the change that you wanted, or did you want to clarify that this section only applies to commercial marijuana dispensaries? Since we already have a provision that prohibits marijuana dispensaries for medical purposes.
I would just use the non-medical marijuana, because we already have the ordinance for no medical marijuana dispensaries.
Okay. The reason I ask is if you leave it the way it is under the definition of marijuana dispensary, it is non-specific. It doesn't single out either commercial or medical. All it says is a marijuana dispensary means a facility or location, whether fixed or mobile, where marijuana or marijuana products are made available for sale, whether for medical purposes or otherwise.
And and so we're in effect duplicating our
Correct.
Medical okay. Well, that's okay then, because we'll go back and look at the medical marijuana ordinance.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear on that, because that's the only textual change that I'd heard being discussed.
And if we change it, it changes the first reading for a month from now, and it gets closer to the August deadline.
No, you could change it today, because it's the first reading.
Call it the first reading?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what the first reading's for, and that's why I want to make sure that whatever textual changes you are suggesting for the first reading, we incorporate so that they come back as a second reading. But because of the definition of marijuana dispensary under the proposed ordinance covers medical and non-medical, changing that section would change the intent of that. We already have a prohibition on medical marijuana dispensaries. This would just add to it. And they're not in conflict, obviously. It's centralized. So you don't need to change Section 543 to address the medical one.
Okay. Let's take a look at the Planning Commission resolution, see if you're satisfied with what they're recommending, or do you want to accept their recommendations or not? They say, after due research and deliberation, make the following regards. The potential environmental impacts are insignificant. The proposed amendment is in the interest of the general community welfare. The proposed amendment is consistent with the general plan and requirements of state planning and zoning laws and the Solvang Municipal Code, and the proposed amendment is consistent with good zoning and planning practices. But we should also consider the following policy issues in making the final determination of the ordinance. We should maximize regulations on growth, including indoor growth, for example, as what was done in Paso Robles. Now, how would you read that? Are we saying that they are limited to 6 and no more plants?
That for indoor cultivation?
Yeah.
Yes.
We can say that in an ordinance.
Well, you just say you allow what's allowed by state law. State law allows 6 plants indoors.
So I think it already reads that way, basically.
It does, yes.
Okay, so that satisfies that part. Okay. Make the provisions, make the provisions apply to any annexations as well.
That's going to be the case when the city annexes. The ordinances that are in place
follows,
are going,
huh?
yeah.
So there would be no.
We don't need to take a specific action to add this ordinance to new areas within town.
There would be no grandfathering in?
Well, there's no grandfathering because
it.
they're not part of the city at this point. So it becomes subject to the reasonable health, safety, and welfare ordinances.
Okay. Ban smoking in public because adult use of smoking may be banned by state law, but more regulation may be necessary. How do we sit on that?
We currently, in the ordinance proposed, incorporate the prohibitions of state law which prohibits smoking cannabis in public places.
Okay. And then ban growth by renters without permission of the landlord. That's something that...
Is there any merit to that, or is that just something that landlords have to start really... And is it enforceable by a landlord?
Well, it's certainly enforceable by a landlord. They do it all the time. It's similar to prohibiting water beds. It's what you place in your lease, that you will not do certain things on the property. Where it gets difficult is for cities to enforce the private contractual relations between a landlord and a tenant in a situation. You can certainly do it as a public education campaign, but for the city to put in something that says we are prohibiting renters from cultivating marijuana on rented properties without the permission of the landlord, that's a matter of state law. They may have an absolute right under the AUMA until the contract between the landlord and the tenant is different. In other words, we're prohibiting something that's allowed by state law. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah. So I would be reluctant to recommend to you that we get involved in the private contractual relationships between a landlord and a tenant in this situation. The reality is landlords are pretty savvy about this already, particularly in the commercial context, because indoor grows are looking for strip malls and warehouses all over California right now because it's easier to grow them inside, and landlords have gotten very savvy about asking what the business purpose is for it.
Yeah.
Residential, that's going to take some time, but it's really, that's more of a function of the private market and the private landlord-tenant relationships than the city in that situation.
And then item 5 is consider requiring a permit even for legal indoor cultivation for private use. What is the?
Again, that'd be going against the grain with.
I don't think we can do that.
You could do it. It's going to be an administrative burden for us to try to track who's got permits for an indoor grow.
Yeah, and then the question becomes, what is the purpose to be gained by that? To ensure no more than 6, to ensure that it is 1 grow per residence as opposed to 1 grow per resident. I've seen some materials out there that says, hey, if there's 6 people living in a house, you get 36 plants. No, that's not what the statute says. You could put in a regulatory scheme, but it would be basically looking at enforcing state law in a situation. If a person has 7 plants in a residence, it's a violation of state law. That's not something the city necessarily needs to get involved in. That would be a penal code violation. That's something the district attorney would enforce. So I'm not sure what additional health, safety, and welfare concerns would be addressed by having the city having a permitting scheme on top of what the state already allows.
Thank you.
It's not to say you can't do that, but you would have to come up with some rational reason why you're wanting to regulate in that means.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to go over this in recognition of the Planning Commission's efforts in relaying this information
Some
to
good
us,
comments,
so that
yeah.
we're aware. We considered their recommendations, and we chose not to agree to them. Also, in their staff report, they talked about the sheriff's office, and the sheriff's not recommending the marijuana activities. And this ordinance, in effect, does what the sheriff is asking. Yes? No? Okay.
Yeah. Yes, I think it's doing what the sheriff has asked.
Right, just where
It also kind of, it also opens it up for us for further discussion down the road.
Yeah.
So, based on all that, and with due consideration of the Planning Commission, can we have a motion on this?
So just to summarize, I think we agreed that we're going to bring this back up for further discussion around like a medical dispensary or something like that, and then also that we're going to bring up our smoking policy to possibly put some more restrictions on it other than just following the state code, correct? Okay.
With that understanding.
So with that understanding, I don't think we actually came up with any changes
No, we
to it
didn't.
as written. So I would make the motion to approve as is.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Just to clarify, the motion would be to introduce by first reading by title only the ordinance itself.
Yes.
All right, will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Toussaint,
Yes.
Waite,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Zimmerman,
No.
Mayor Richardson.
Yes. That passes with a 4-1. Thank you. Let's take a short break, about 5 minutes or so. Come back at a quarter after by that clock.
Hey, for once I didn't ask you for the bathroom break.
Oh, I'm sitting here. On to item 7.
She's getting giddy.
She stole one of the.
Uh-oh,
the
oh,
vapes.
yeah. Right, there you go.
Item 7, request for license agreement for Hovering Tours LLC for use of city streets for Segway rentals.
Staff report?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, you have in your packet a proposal for a new tour group here in Solvang. Back in 2015, you adopted a resolution in consideration of future adventures using the city streets, and so that's why we've brought this before you. We've had a proposal by Hovering Tours to bring in mini segways and use them. I'm going to actually have them come up and present what they'd like to do for their plan, even though it is in the packet, but I think it'd be better if both Kevin and Sean come up and give their presentation on what they propose to do with the mini segways.
Good evening, Mayor, Council.
Oh, aren't those cute?
Thank you for seeing us today. You guys, I don't think this will be as okay, sure.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I don't think this will be as complicated as what you guys just talked about as far as marijuana is concerned. And
Thank
being
you
in
for
the
your
cities.
patience.
Oh no, go right ahead.
Okay, so we're just
Speak
here
in the mic.
looking for the for our conveyance license, just to be able to have these and to rent these out in the streets. They're quite safe. They're very easy to ride. Takes about 10 minutes to train on them, but we offer 20 minutes free training with our 1 hour ride.
That's outside the 1 hour?
That's outside the 1 hour. So, I don't know if you have any questions for us.
Yeah, I do. Do you, when your 20-minute training, do you take the individuals, on a designated route while you're training them on it?
The first initial 20 minutes, we have a nice size office, and the carpet allows extra stable ground to train on. So for the first initial training, we would like to be in our office just to get familiar with the device itself. And then we will go with them on down the street to make sure they have it fully before they are allowed to go by themselves.
The learning curve on using one of these isn't very long. When we first introduced it to Brad, actually, he stopped by our office and we actually showed him how easy it was, and we told him that all you have to do is when you get on it, it's like taking a step. Now, when you first get on it, you're going to start to wobble, but once you figure out the technology is going to balance you, and you're not going to go anywhere, this is pretty much what it does for you. And then once you get it going and you start going back and forth and you start to learn how to turn, it's much like skiing. Like with this, you're just turning. That's all it is. And once you get that aspect, and once you start going, then you start understanding how it goes, and just to get off of it is just quite that simple. So the learning curve on getting on one of these isn't that long. We are concerned about safety, and fun. Sean and I have lived in this town for, 7+ years, and we've gone through the town on one of these, and we're like, man, there's so many people that would love to just tour Solvang the way that we just did, and it felt like hovering through this, through the city. And that's just what we want our tourists to kind of feel and get a new, new view of the city, actually.
Have you ridden that up and down Copenhagen in the main?
Yes.
Yes, we have.
Yes.
Yes, we have.
In the traffic and that sort of thing?
Yes, we have.
Yes.
It's much. I'm sorry. It's much like we use these as vehicles. Much like riding a bike. Now I know Brad rides a bike. A lot of you guys ride bikes, and I know you have the proposal to just get rid of all cars altogether on the weekends. Copenhagen, just for tourists, as you explained earlier. That would be great, because you wouldn't have to deal with the cars. Or on 246, you're trying to free up 246. It'd be great for that too as well. It's very small. We saw that they have a bike rental place that rents these out already, and we just want to be a part of that. It's kind of like the new thing these days. It's made by Segway. It's a very, very great company.
It looks like a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun.
Yes, it's quite safe.
I'm concerned about even pedestrians walking up and down Copenhagen, with traffic mind getting in and out of their cars, and what effect that would have on the traffic flow.
Yes, it actually does not get in the way. If you look at the size, when you're standing on it, it is pretty much shoulder length. I've taken this to the market, when you have the fruit market going on, and I go in and I get my fruit the whole time I'm on it. No problem. Yeah. Not like that. I mean, I kind of stay with the pace. I'm not rushing through them.
Really, really slow on one of these.
What's awesome about these devices, yeah, there's actually a sensor in it. You cannot go faster than 10 miles an hour. It will actually force you to stop. So you don't go very fast, but it's a fun, swift way of just touring a town or a city. They're renting out the scooters in San Diego. They hurt your feet, and your feet get sore, and it's hard to maneuver. These are just a lot more fun. Hands-free, easy for pictures while you're going down the street. Now, you can walk Solvang in, an hour, maybe 30 minutes, like walk and see the city of Solvang in an hour. Well, here you can ride around. You can wheel it into any store you go into. So you just turn it off, and you pull it with you like a luggage.
It's like a luggage that you literally.
But it's very safe. In our waiver form, we will make sure that they have a valid driver's license. And tell them they have to use the law of the road. You know, that you have to, it's common sense.
Yeah, it's much like driving a vehicle. I mean, if you're going down Copenhagen, you're obviously going to look before you cross the crosswalks and intersections, you know, before going. Or if a car's lights are red and all of a sudden turn white just in reversing, you would stop for that. You know, so we definitely are going to teach this before we say, hey, all right, go ahead. Good luck. You know what I mean? We are concerned about that and, you know, their well-being and making sure that they are, you know, able to just have fun with these and tour the city in a safe manner. That's about it.
And what happens if during the training session or the little trial run you'd find a user that just
can't do it?
Can't do it?
They probably won't.
They won't do it.
They probably won't. We had one guy that was like, man, I was on one of those things and, you know, I got it and I sprang it. Look at my arm. It has like 12,000 stitches up in it. I'm like, well, yeah, you probably use those Segway, you know, they're called hoverboards that are independent. So the ones that your kids probably have, your feet are independent. So if you want to go right, you go like this. If you want to go left, you go like this. If both feet are going like this, then you may go straight. If you go like this, you may go back.
Not stable.
Whereas on one of these, it's a flat board. It's as flat as if you're going to take a step and get on one of these and stand up and get on it. That's how easy it is, because it is flat. And the reason how you're going to go forward is you're just leaning. And then when you're steering, you're just pushing it just a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, and when you're going back, you're just leaning back. That's about as easy as it is. Just like that. I tell them it's much like a skier, if you've skied before, or rode a horse. This is like your saddle right here if you're going left and right.
And what happens if someone accidentally knocks you while you're on that thing? You run into, or someone runs into you, you know, I mean, we still have collisions even on foot. Does that then tell the machine to dive off somewhere else, or?
We tell them you don't want to, I'm going to get back to your question. We tell the people we don't want you to get off on the front because it will just take off and hit you right here.
Okay.
We want you to just step back. Now, if they were around their friends or around somebody, and they were to do that, then yeah, it would go. But then there's a safety thing on here to where it'll shut down. It'll go beep, 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 and just stop.
Because it's unstable and then it just...
Right. It'll find that it's unstable and it'll just go beep, 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 and it'll just stop. It'll just die and whatever and whatnot. But these are pretty safe. It's made by a reputable company. They're small. We've talked to Brad about not going on sidewalks. That was a main concern. It is small enough to go on sidewalks. We do not want to go on sidewalks, I think.
Although most videos on YouTube, they are on sidewalks. But there's, in Solvang, right on El Sol, in front of the ice cream shop and the
Going out store.
The going out store, that walkway is 20 feet wide. Whereas on the residential streets, we're talking 3 feet. Those, no. And we'll be very, very thorough on explaining to them what you can, where you can and can't go. It's common sense on being able to go. It's very easy. Like I said, the maneuvering, I also wanted to point out there aren't going to be that many of them. I don't want you to think there's going to be hundreds all over the place. There's only, the most we're going to have is 4 an hour, maybe the most, maybe 20 in a day. You're not going to notice them that often. It's not going to be that much. But
I don't know if you guys are familiar with birds. I know you're around my age. You're around my age. There's a company called Bird. Have you heard of it? There's scooter companies that we're both from San Diego. That's where we know each other. They have what's called Birds, and it's an app. You download the app, and then there's scooters. And these birds, these scooters, they're called Birds, are sprinkled through all of, let's say, Santa Monica, San Diego. They're sprinkled just all over the beach, Pacific Beach. We don't want to be that. We just want to be respectful of Solvang and a chance to just give tourists like a different feel of touring Solvang, like a hovering experience. That's what we felt when we were on one of these things. And they are really small. And there's a lot of couples that come to this town. We see them all the time, you know. There's a lot, you know, it's wedding season, you know. People coming from LA that don't know what to do in Solvang. They don't want to ride behind a horse, you know, through carriages through town. Or they don't want to take those 4-wheeled bikes and tire themselves down once they get down to 5th Street, where we used to live, and then go back up a bit, you know. We're not going to be like that, and it's a lot more fun. They see the town in 30 minutes.
How many are you going to be running at any time?
We have 6 of them. We assume the most would be like 4 an hour. 4 an hour.
And if it becomes real popular, do you plan on expanding, I imagine?
Yes. Yes. We want to extend, well, yes, in other cities. Are you talking about like having 30 at one time?
Yeah, you know, they're having 8 or 10 of these things.
No, we plan on maybe doubling up to maybe, we have what, 6 right now?
Yeah.
We plan on doubling up to maybe 12 or 15, but out of respect, we'll probably ask for your approval, much like anything that we have to do here in Solvang.
I would ask that you let us know when
Right.
you're going to expand
Right.
the number out there, because it could be a safety problem.
Right.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Because of the training process, I don't think we can do more than what we have already. I mean, we want to make sure that a small group of people get the information all at once and can understand. We don't want to have 20 people in a room and not knowing who understands what. Just a very small group. So I think it'll just be fun and exciting.
And then I notice here that your hours of operation are from 11 to 7.
Yes, sir.
That would be in the summertime. I imagine in the winter you'd be shutting down at sunset.
We'd be starting a little earlier, and we'd be shutting down at sunset. And if, like, the other, you know, there's Segway Solvang, they have to get your approval on anything, whether or not they go on night tours. We pretty much do the same thing. We get your approval on if we wanted to go after sunset on a night tour. But these do have lighting
They
on
have
them.
headlights. They're censored, so there's a lot of light here, so they're not on. But if you were to turn the lights off, the headlights come on. They have brake lights. So I'm going forward now, so it's blue. I can change that to any color. But as soon as I back up, it's red. There are turn signals on it to let people know which way I'm going. So it has all the lights, all the safety features.
Yeah,
and as far as your question about hitting, like going off, you would simply just jump off. And this device stands up on its own and corrects itself.
Okay.
So it would just stand there. You would just jump off real quick. So if that was an issue, but it's very simple. And someone want to try it? Come on, someone try it. Come on.
Yeah, sure. Come on, Ryan. Yeah. Sure, go ahead. Give him a lesson.
Let me just show you.
Well, like we said, you know, if we were to go on a night tour, we definitely come to the city council for approval. And on a day on when we do it, there's a lot of young people that come into this town and have nothing to do besides try to get drunk or do something else or go to sleep. We'd like to offer that to them, a chance. It is a unique experience touring this town at night on one of these things. It's very beautiful. I don't know if you guys have ever done it. Sean and I have, because we lived here. It's absolutely beautiful going down Copenhagen at night.
That takes 5
no
minutes.
traffic or nothing.
All right. When you step on it, it is going to be like this.
Got it.
Because you're not used to being on 2 wheels. But if you stand up straight, you're not going to go anywhere. Just like this. Okay? So you simply go forward, you slightly lean forward, don't bend your back, because you're kind of bouncing the weight, you're not gonna go anywhere. Right, so as a pole, you just lean forward, and then backward. And this is the steering. I don't want you to do anything else, just that.
Just like you're standing on a
Step.
step.
Stand straight up and down.
Stand straight up and down.
All right.
There you go. I want you to go forward.
Relax.
Yeah,
And
relax.
lean forward.
Lean forward. Just trust it that it's going to balance you.
You gotta trust the device. Yeah.
There you go.
Then lean back. Then
Just
step
lean
off
back.
backwards like a step.
Just lean back to go backwards. Perfect.
Circle.
Perfect.
So put pressure.
So put pressure on your knee, just like a horse. It's just like that middle bar is like a saddle. You want the horse to go right, you're gonna push it right.
See you guys.
You want it to go left, you're gonna push it left. Now, I said the training curve is no longer than probably about 10 to 15 minutes. But we do want to establish places where you can go, where you can't go. We don't want anybody crossing 246 at all, because there is a lot of traffic.
That was my next.
Our map has a big red, cannot go.
Yeah, we do give, you know, one of the things before we let people go out, we do show them a map, and we give it to them. And it's something you can do. Once you're on one of these things, it's hold a map and know where to go and where not to go. And if you do go where you're not supposed to go, I mean, we have people that will, a person will be out there just looking to see where these people are.
Trackers, we'll have trackers.
Yeah, with tracking devices, and then we'll be like, hey, what were you doing over here? You might get penalized.
We have helmets.
Helmets.
Helmets are required, knee pads, nail pads, we have, but that's up to them.
Okay. So you actually have tracking devices on each.
We have little tiles on them.
Oh.
You know where they are.
So you can okay.
See them on our phone, yeah, or
Okay. Because I get a little nervous sending people out and about on their own just because it's really densely populated on the weekends with traffic and pedestrians. So you can be able to monitor where they are.
Yeah, they're going to be taking a $600 piece of equipment with them if they steal it, you know, so we definitely want to know where it's going.
And how do you feel about a set path or a set tour for them?
We want to get away from that, only to have them have their own personal
Experience.
experience of Solvang, however they wish. We will go with them and have points like, you should see this store, see this shop, look at this place.
Look at this windmill.
Give history, the windmill. We'll give them places to see, but if they do want us to take them, we will have that option as well. So if they don't know, they just want some guidance, we will take them. But it's, we are trying to just have them have a great
the freedom
experience
of just experiencing
in Solvang,
you know.
just a fun way.
Yeah, a fun,
unique way.
safe way.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Now we'll go to the public for comment. I have a couple of speaker slips. Tracy Beard, followed by Bob McCarthy.
I love the gadget. I love the fact of competition. I worry very seriously about unguided tours within our community. I see unguided tours as dangerous when I look at Saturday, Sunday, Friday evening. I think the freedom is wonderful for people to go where they want to go, but I still see this as a total danger. The hill of Alisal Road, when I looked at the map from last week, they could go down that, and that I saw Ryan just on a straightaway for the very first time. I see that as could be dangerous going down. Ryan's question was not answered. If the person knocks another person off on their feet is on a sidewalk, who is liable, and where's the liability at? Is the person liable, or is the company liable? We're not against anything. I'm just for making this more I want to say user-friendly and more community, a little bit more contained and paths in certain areas. Because I really see, I know the danger of bikes right now. I see it all the time, and I see it going right onto Route 246. I don't see them following the path of what you're going to say they can't go on. They're gonna go. And then when you come back, you're going to slap their hand. But we do want to have more business here. We just think because we have 1.5 million tourists, they don't listen all the time, and we all know that.
Thank you, Tracy.
So to answer I have a question. So with regard to liability, I presume that their business would carry a certain amount of liability insurance.
Yeah, we require them to have $1 million and have the city listed as additionally insured. Well, that's true with all the conveyance.
And that would be sufficient for this?
Well, I'll let the attorney answer that question.
For 98% of the cases, yes. If you have a traumatic brain injury, $1 million is not a lot of money. Having helmets helps in that regard, but you cannot possibly insure against every conceivable risk out there. $1 million is fairly standard for this type of activity.
Would the city be liable in any condition?
We're only permitting something, but as I like to say, anyone with $450 and a typewriter can file a lawsuit against the city. We have liability insurance for that. Being named as an additional insured on the conveyance operator's insurance would provide us an initial layer of liability insurance that would not draw on our own insurance. So I believe that having that would protect the city against almost every conceivable risk.
And the $1 million policy you're describing, that would apply, is it aggregate, and so medical is only like a $10,000 portion of it?
Well,
or?
Medical payments on a general liability policy are typically done on a no-fault basis, so it's an option that you can buy as part of a policy that will pay without any showing of liability, without any showing. It's more as a goodwill gesture. If the amount of medical bills are $500, you have an emergency room visit, they just pay it. They don't worry about who's liable, who was at fault, and so on. It's just one of those no-fault things. If you're going into the $1 million layer, then you would need to show that the insured was negligent or otherwise was liable for the injury involved. And that's why you have the higher limits on that. There's a significantly greater burden to go in and try to attach that level of coverage.
Got it. And so customers, would they have to show that they have like medical insurance or things like that otherwise?
That would be up to the vendor if they would require that. That would be unusual, I would say. If you think of other types of activities that you go where, just think of wearing a helmet. If you go use go-karts or you rent a bicycle and so on, you typically are not required to show that you have your own medical insurance.
Yeah.
You're required to exercise due care, but it would probably be very difficult for a vendor to police whether or not someone had valid medical insurance in a particular situation. That's why they have the liability insurance, to protect them against whatever might happen.
Got it.
Bob McCarthy?
Good evening. Thank you for having me. You have to forgive me. I'm not a public speaker, but I'll try my best. I'm a manager of Segway Tours in Solvang. I've been doing this for over 6.5 years. I am very, very good at training. I've gone 2 years without one accident. That is unheard of in the industry. I have seen situations where I'll take people on a ride, and I've trained them very well, and they're very good. All of a sudden, they get into something that's a little hairy, either a car backing up or something, and all of a sudden they're saying, what do I do, what do I do, what do I do? They don't know what to do. And I'll say, turn left. They turn left, and they're out of the way of the car. I said, now come to a stop. And then I re-instruct them again. What did you do wrong? How did you do this? This and that. Solvang, as everyone knows, gets very, very busy. Some weekends it's unbelievably busy. I haven't had a problem with cars. I don't go into town very much. I basically go back down to Fjord, along the river, cross the bridge, come back, tell about the history of the town, the countryside, and basically once through town on Copenhagen. That's the only place I go. And it's a guided tour. We all have had experiences of seeing the Surrey carts out on 246 or down by the river many times. I think this is the same thing going to happen. Once we're on this, oh, we can go here. I know it says we can't, but we can go to this, we can go here. It should be a guided tour for a safety factor of not only the people riding it, but the people that are walking on the street that may be hit by one accidentally. Maybe not very fast, but knock them down on the ground and someone could get severely hurt. I don't have much more. I'm concerned about liability. I know there's liability insurance, we have it. But boy, if you get a lot of accidents, this could build up really quick. I'm just very concerned about it. Thank you very much.
I have no other speaker slips. Does anyone else wish to speak? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council for discussion. Who would like to start?
One last question. So if I were to purchase one of these devices for my own self, what are the limits on me for riding this around Solvang?
So our city code does not allow you to ride it on the sidewalks in the area that's identified in the handout that's on the thing. It's pretty much the TRC area. But so you're not allowed to ride a bicycle, a skateboard, a Segway on sidewalks within that area.
Okay.
So yeah, even as a person, as an individual, you're not supposed to do that.
Okay.
Now, it's not a heavily, policed action, but yeah, we did do that. The city council adopted that quite a few years ago, just because of the concern of the pedestrians walking and having mobile things in between them.
So whichever method, you need to be on the street.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other comments?
Well, I really am pro-business, and I think this is great. I'm a little concerned about sending people off on their own, but I'm trying to mitigate that concern by perhaps having designated routes, not just where you can't go, but the routes that you must stay on when you're renting from your company. I hear the concerns about not having the guided tour and having individuals in a situation where this is the first time they've been on one of these vehicles and not knowing what to do, and the benefits of having a guide be there to help them. So when you said you have spotters out there, do you mean you have actually people out and about, or are they just people that are monitoring them on the phones and monitoring the location devices?
They're both. So both. Yeah, the trackers will know where they are. If they're in a no-go zone, it will let us know, and we will go to them. I would say a lot of the times we would be free to go and just check on them, see them, how they're doing, every 20 minutes. But if you do want a certain tour or a certain place where they must go, that would be fine too. I mean, to see Solvang in a way that you want them to see it is fine by us also. So you don't want them to just go. If you want,
Yeah, I'm thinking starting out with the designated route. I mean, a new business coming into town and setting people free on these, I would feel much more comfortable with the designated route.
okay, absolutely.
I agree with that, but I also would like to consider a trial period. Because of the way Bob explained it with his operation, there is potential for accident.
Yeah.
And if you do have an unusual number of accidents, we should know that, so we should be able to prevent any further harm. I'm wondering if we can set some sort of a trial period.
Well, we've done trial periods with other individuals before when we had the pedicab and.
Yeah, I think you said
we said a shorter license period.
Was a 1 year actually. I think you gave them.
I would even think shorter than a year.
1 year is your standard.
We go through the summer period, where the traffic and the people are the heaviest,
Right.
and see how well that's handled during that time, and then consider extending the license after that time, like from now till October or something, and then in October make a final decision as to go ahead.
That's a bit much to ask a small business that's starting out. I mean, you got to give them a year, and then regulating on every little bit that they do for their business. I mean, they're seeing an opportunity, a need. They're filling a specific target market, which is going to be the people that are confident enough to get on the thing. I think going any further than like recommending where people should go is a bit too much.
I could agree with that. I'm more for giving people a shot, and I really don't think that people that don't feel confident in jumping on that thing and freely going after 25 minutes are really going to have that kind of an issue. So, but also, where would your location be for the your business?
We have a location right now in the Jensen building upstairs, on Alsall Road.
Okay.
We're right above the ice cream shop.
Got it. So you'll be upstairs, and then the devices, I presume, are stored downstairs. How's
Someone
that?
will be down there. Yes, there'll probably be three along
training
the wall or the
okay.
post,
Got it.
just sitting there.
Okay.
And we do have handlebars for the training process also, which
Mhm.
I didn't bring, but there are handlebars that you put on it, and it's an extension of it, just so it feels more safe to get on it.
Now, I know you asked about the safety concerns and whether or not a person's able to ride it. I mean, one of our questions is, are you able to lift 30 pounds? And that's how heavy this is. You know, it's if you could lift 30 pounds and still walk with it and just move it wherever you want, that qualifies you enough. We're not gonna have like some disabled person saying, I don't want to ride it, you know what I mean? And say, okay, yeah, sure, go ahead, come back in an hour. You know, that's just not how our business practice is gonna go. If you guys want to limit us 6 months, and yeah, it does take a year, not everybody's confident, be like, yeah, I'm gonna go, I want to ride that.
Right.
You know, that'd be fair too as well. But we love your comments and your considerations and their considerations. But you know, like I said, it's hard enough to convince somebody that two wheels is gonna balance them, and then have them go within that hour and be like, okay, I'm gonna do something reckless, or yeah, something might happen, but we tell them that, hey, look, you guys sign a liability form. There's a lot of liability. We have our attorneys look over it. You are watched, you know, just don't do something stupid that will get yourself hurt through the town.
But it is a lot of people will go by and not feel safe. Like they'll go by and go, oh, that's cool, but it's not for me. So the people that do, like you were like, yeah, I want to try it. That's more type of people we'll get. More of the couples and people that want to go on it. The people that are more fit and able to ride it are going to be the ones that are going to ride it. Because the bigger segways do look a lot more safe, and they're bigger. So people want to get on those more than these because it just looks smaller. It doesn't look like it is going to be safe for some individuals, but it absolutely is.
I've got a mental picture about one of those little hoverboards in my head, you know?
There you go.
Yeah, those are very dangerous.
And it's nothing like that.
Nothing like it. Nothing like it.
That's
really safe.
maneuvered
And
by
if
feet.
you're not capable of going through the 20-minute training, and then we see that you are reckless with it, we're gonna be like, hey, sorry, you know, we appreciate your business, we appreciate your wanting to do it, but you know, you're just not the kind
Too
of person.
gung-ho.
Yeah.
Is there any form of deposit that you guys will retain on each individual?
We will keep their credit card.
And their driver's license.
And
But like, if I were to go do it, am I signing anything where
They will-
so I have some form of liability if I go out and am
They will know
negligent?
on the form that,
Okay.
you know, there will be a $500. It's not, we're not gonna have them deposit it.
Mhm.
We are gonna hold their credit card.
Got it.
And when they come back, then we give it back to them, along with their driver's license. But we do have on our liability form that, yeah, it's $500 if you do damage it, or it doesn't work, or you just totally just jack it up to where it's not able to function anymore.
Got it.
it's very extensive. I mean, cannot be under the influence of drugs, alcohol. It goes over all the safety points. The map will be on it too, where to go. It's going to be very, very, we'll be very thorough on the training, the safety, where they can and can't go, and totally make sure they understand.
I'm gonna ask you guys something. You guys have an iPhone. I mean, I do. I have an iPhone. And this one is very expensive. It's an iPhone 10. I'm gonna have a case on it because I don't want to drop it, because I am scared that it's gonna crack and then I have to get it replaced, and I'm gonna have to spend more money on a new phone. That's kind of like how this is. And once they know how expensive it is, you're not gonna go reckless. Yeah, granted, there are gonna be maybe somebody that hits them or whatever, maybe in an hour, but we're saying, hey, this is like a car. This is like a bike. Use your common knowledge that you would in driving a car and riding a bicycle, because that's how it is.
And so does that also have does this thing have a lower center of gravity than a Segway?
It is a Segway.
Or like the traditional?
The ones that Segway Solvang have are a lot bigger.
Okay.
Now, I think over the years since they've started, they were a lot bigger to where they would take over a sidewalk. But I think they've gotten smaller, and he's gotten the bigger ones, the ones with the handles and a satchel on it. It still looks big. With this, I mean, this is about as wide as I am. You know, I'm not going, and if somebody's in front of me, I'm not going to run them over. I'm just probably going to just go the speed that they're going, you know. As being on a sidewalk, I'm not going to want to go this fast on a sidewalk and be like, I want to see Solvang. You're going to want to go, you know, on the street, not in the middle of the street, but, you know, in the bike paths. I know I looked at the report that you guys are implementing bike paths because of little kids that use bike paths, and you guys don't have a lot of them here. That'd be great if that passes. I know you guys are looking at implementing, making 246 a lot more, you know, yeah, friendly. You guys are looking at making Copenhagen on the weekends a lot friendly. With this, you are going to see Solvang, and we'd like to have in the street, if the streets are blocked off in Copenhagen on a weekend, this would be great to actually just tour. You know, it's about as fast as walking. It's about 3 times as fast as walking is what as fast as these go. And if people want to see Solvang in a unique way, hovering experience, but see it faster, this is a great tool for them, you know, to use.
So are you, okay, I asked this, but I'm going to ask it in a different way. If there was a designated route, would that be negative for your business? Or would that be something that you would be amenable to?
That'd be something we'd be looking to consider. When I was down in San Diego, I used one of these. There is something like this. They have the older models, and they're really, 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 really ugly. I did have a route. I'm from San Diego myself. I grew up in Poway, in the suburbs of San Diego. If you go to Mission Beach, they have that whole boardwalk that you can go down.
Yeah.
And that's about
That's your
it.
route.
You know, that is considered a designated route. I mean, I'm not going to take one of those scooters or this in the streets of PD or Mission Beach or wherever I brought it from. Granted, you do have an hour. If you drive that far, you got to get back this far back. We do charge extra per hour.
It's not going to damage our business. I like the fact of putting in a route. We will just, you have arrow. You go here. You go down Copenhagen. You make a right on this street. You come back, and this is your area. And there is no problem with having a designated route for.
That sounds much more acceptable.
Because they can still stop in, roll it into a, turn it off and roll it into a store, set it up on the wall, you go to your thing, okay, get back on the street. All right, then you go to the next spot.
Can you disable it?
Excuse me?
Can you disable it? Was there a key or something that?
Yes, on my phone I can lock it so that it
Can
cannot
the
be
user,
written.
can the user disable it?
Yes, you just turn it off with
Oh.
the front
I
button.
mean, so nobody else would pick it up while they're in the store, for example?
Correct.
Yeah.
They download the app and it's one push of a button and it's locked. It beeps and goes nuts and won't let you stand on it.
Oh, wow.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, it's,
We'll go
so we
back
do
to-
have the $2 million life insurance policy, and we do have the waiver forms, which covers us and the Segway, and the guided route is awesome, so.
I do like that idea. Well, like I said, you know, we just want a chance to give a different experience for Solvang. That's about it. You know, it is.
I
gonna
see
be
the
hard.
family of 4 on those bikes going like this, it's like all that work, and you're just going, you've just been down, you're sweating, and you didn't even get to see much.
Yeah, but you know, one
This
of
is
the
just so
things about
easy.
those people are riding those always have a smile on their face.
Yes.
They do.
Yes.
Until they go down Fifth Street and have to come back up.
Right. That's the hard part, coming back. Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Any more discussion?
I just wanted to clarify on the location. They wouldn't be able to put them out. That would meet our sign ordinance. I don't think they're having them out, so they wouldn't be able to put them on the sidewalk as an advertisement.
Oh, yeah.
So, because you asked where would they be stored.
Right.
So yeah, we don't have the ability for them to put them out on the sidewalk to draw in customers. I'm looking at the sign ordinance. Yeah, would that be correct? Yeah, they would have to go to the BAR to get their.
Oh yeah,
sign
I was going to ask. So they haven't been before the BAR yet.
They have not.
Oh.
No.
But the BIR could approve that they store these things on a sidewalk. Is that what I'm hearing?
I doubt they would approve that.
Is it considered, so just following that same line, because you're now making the device the sign, right?
Yeah.
Okay. How do they
It's
park in
stored.
front of another store? Or
Well, no, they couldn't use them to advertise at that.
location?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
people can drive them around town, and as with the PD cycle, we said he could have one ad on the cycle, but he had to take that to the BAR to get approval for it.
Got it.
It'd be a similar kind of thing.
But it's not
the
a-
BAR would need to approve
Right.
any of the signage that they would do.
Okay.
So where's your location again? Right at the end of Copenhagen, in the Jensen building down there? Okay, so if that's private property underneath there, they could put those things underneath there, underneath the overhang, because they do it over here with the Surreys. They're out, they're on private property.
Our permitted uses in the TRC zone district allow for an establishment to be operated within an enclosed space, retail lease space.
Well, the Surreys
So
are not. The
they
Surreys
would
are
have to be
not.
stored inside the.
The Surreys are, they're located outside.
The Surreys have a conditional use permit. You're talking about the Surrey cycles?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they operate under a special use permit, a conditional use permit, separate type of permit.
So it'd be up to the BAR to approve something like that for this type of operation,
No,
if they wanted to store it outside.
Yeah, if they're not in
It's-
their leased property.
Right. Okay.
That's through the planning commission,
Or through the planning
and
commission.
that
Okay.
costs money.
Right. Okay.
Okay, shall we take action? Can I have a motion?
I want to make sure that your business is successful. So I don't want to put too many restrictions on this to the point where it's asking for failure. But and I understand some of the sense in getting it down to more of a route. But I'm also concerned about the user experience. I mean, I can tell they're going to get excited about being on this thing. They're going to want to see Solvang. And to then tell them that they have to follow that, that I want to make sure they have a good experience too and want to use it. Maybe there's even some sense in limiting the first hour of usage, that it has to be the guided route, and if there's no problem, then they can move up to doing Route 2 or something, or be more free with the bike. That might, the Segway, that might make the council feel more comfortable about people being let a little bit more free on the street. Just throwing ideas out there.
I want to let them go ahead and get to it already.
I would be more than happy to go with that. So, I'll make the motion that we approve this and just make it a 1-year license, and we'll just reevaluate this in a year.
Is there a second?
So basically that's what's stated as just looking for approval to.
Well, we were looking for direction. Typically, we don't just bring you a contract because we're not sure if you're going to approve it. And so there is no contract in here. We would model a contract after the other conveyances that we have.
But I think there were suggestions in here for,
Yeah.
like it specified the number of units and
Hours of operation.
yeah, hours of operation.
So those are the things we put into the agreement, and so we could easily develop that
Right.
from what the
We'll
guys
bring
you
that
give.
back to us for approval.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're clear on it, we could just, execute it. But I think you'd want to, signage is an issue. I think Councilmember Waite brought up too, is going to the BAR and getting that approved. That's another piece of this that they would have to do. But yeah, I mean, that's typically how the process is. Bring it before you guys to see if you like the concept, and then come back with an agreement with the details of it. Because you may want to limit it to 4. I heard that also. So.
I have a question. How many units do you have? 6?
We have 6, ma'am.
And they're going to be stored upstairs? And then they're going to walk them down? Okay. Okay.
I really want to see a route. I'm not stuck on having the guided tour, but I'd like to see a designated route.
You want to amend the motion? Or
Right
you-
now, we're just looking to approve them to be able to do what they want to do, and then the agreement will come down to negotiations with the city, us, and them at a future date. So
Oh, is that correct?
that's correct, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they would, without a license agreement, they can't begin operation.
Right,
So
so-
we would bring back a license agreement. What we need to know is, do you want to see a guided route, designated route in that agreement, or just allow them to have an area where the users can go, or a guided tour? Those would be your 3
So right
options.
now we need to give staff recommendation on.
We'd need some direction to put it into an agreement.
Right.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay. I would be good with the area restrictions.
So there are currently area restrictions.
It is, but I mean,
So I think it's on page 132 of your.
No, that's.
So maybe, is there any other particular places you would like to restrict? Right?
No, that's not their map. Their
Which
map
is-
has off limits at the top.
What page? I'm trying to find the.
I don't have a page number.
Did you guys say you have the map?
It's
Is that-
right
Is
here.
that something you can?
26, I think.
you just had it.
127.
It's that.
127 of our packet.
1, 2,
Same map.
There we go.
Okay, you
Yeah,
got
that's
it.
that
You
same
got it.
map that's in the
Off limits.
packet.
Yeah, they.
Yeah, you got it.
I'm just sorry, I have to pull it up again. Area. Limits off limits.
Give that to Karen.
Yeah, that's that one. Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
So what was the last one we had? It was similar. It was like it was the bike.
The PD cycle.
The
bike
petty
cab,
cycle.
Bike cab, yeah.
Yeah.
petty cycle.
Whatever happened to that?
He has a license agreement, so he's able to operate.
There's a motion on the table. If there are any amendments or changes to it, I believe did I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any comments, discussion? If not, we'll take a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Toussaint,
Yes.
Zimmerman,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Wait,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson.
Yes. That passes with a 5-0.
I have my picture.
Thank you,
back.
guys. Good luck.
Picture back.
Oh, she wants your picture back.
What? Oh, the picture back. Oh. Next on the agenda is council member reports. Who has them?
Who has it, huh?
No council member reports? Then
Well, no, that's quite true.
Library?
Yes, library. And I don't know if you received the letter that we wrote to Santa Barbara City?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's my report.
Okay. Well done.
Well, there's
Gold
not,
star.
it's going to be very interesting to see what happens tomorrow.
Yeah, the city of Santa Barbara will be taking it up tomorrow on options for what they're going to do on the administration fee for libraries.
Okay. Advanced calendar. Are there any comments, changes on that? Then we go into closed session. Did you read the closed session item?
Item 10, closed session, Government Code Section 54957.6, conference with labor negotiators, agency representative, designated negotiator Dave Fleischman, city attorney, employee organization Teamsters Local 986.
Okay, we're adjourned to closed session.
I have a question. When do we do grants?
Say that again?
When
We
do
do
we
that
do
as part of the
grants?
budget workshop.
Part of the budget,
Well,
right?
people have asked me that, so maybe they need to be informed that that's when it's gonna happen.
That's,
Because
yeah,
it
we've
does
done
not
that every
say,
year.
it does not say here that that's part of the budget. I mean, I know it's part of the budget, but they don't know it's part of the budget workshop, which takes place on June 11th. Is that correct?
There will be a consideration of
It
grant
will be-
funding at that.
Yes.
It
At
will be
that-
done on the, during council meeting.
On June 11th.
June 11th, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
And then, yes, that's true. And then the final budget come back for approval in the last meeting.
So they should be prepared to come on the 11th to state their case.
Well, I think the budget subcommittee talked about allocating a certain amount of money in the budget, and then at the final budget hearing, allocating that to the agencies.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you still would, that was the
Right.
plan.
Yes.
So it wouldn't be them, they wouldn't show up. They're gonna talk about in total how much would go to grants in the first,
Oh.
in the workshop.
Oh, this is what the
So-
Finance Committee has decided to do.
Well, we're
This is their
also
recommendation.
Oh.
we're also trying to follow the policy that we set around grants. So we're trying to get the budget developed around that, and then have grants be the second portion.
So they are not going to have the opportunity to come and speak. Is that what you're telling us?
Oh,
They
no,
would
no,
at the final budget adoption.
June 20. So I guess maybe it'd be better if they came on June 25th.
Yes, that's, assuming the budget subcommittee is gonna stick with that recommendation.
Oh, okay.
And we can send that out to the grant applicants.
Okay,
That
because
proposed schedule.
everybody's asking, and I don't know what to tell them.
I was looking for Sandra.
Okay, we're adjourned to closed session.